Is a project from Gary Vaynerchuk. I think people will know him from Vee Friends. Many people will know him from all of his other social media and marketing activities prior to the NFT space. Obviously, a big, maybe the most prominent person who sort of crosses over in terms of awareness, in terms of the Web 2 and Web 3 world right now. He and Vito Schnabel, who has a number of galleries, have created ArtOfficial. Now, one of the things about it is a marketplace. So they're already selling NFTs on there. And I don't think it's started yet, but the first opera NFT is going to be on there. But they also have some visual artists, which they launched with. It's really for established artists. So you find OpenSea you find some established artists, you find some new artists. What I think about is ArtOfficial is playing on this fact that obviously Schnabel has a lot of contacts and expertise in the industry. Gary Vaynerchuk has a lot of contacts. He certainly knows people in the industry, but he also really has this incredible reach. And one of the things I try to talk to people about is like we now have 100 to 1,000x more collectors of art than we had just a year ago. It's just amazing what's going on. People are now art collectors who never would have considered themselves that before. But we have this idea of sort of Mr. Inside and Mr. Outside playing off of this, and really an opportunity for some of these established artists to take advantage of both of those pieces. It seems to me that this is competing more with Rarible and Foundation than something like OpenSea.
I think so. This is a kind of a mix of all those things. I think you're right. It's got a little taste of those other NFT platforms. And it also feels a little like, I know obviously he just sold some stuff at that Christie's auction. So I wonder how much of it might be a little bit more like a traditional auction in terms of, will there be sort of like, those sort of live events? Cause I know he's into that kind of stuff and it has some hype around it. It's, I think it's different. He's really good at the niche thing, you know, finding some aspect or context around a product or service and finding how to make it appeal to people. So this one's interesting to me.
Yeah. And so he brings expertise along the technical side. Maybe not him necessarily personally, but obviously he's built up technology businesses in the past. Plus he had his own successful NFT drop off of his own website.
Yep.
So he's done that. He certainly has been playing on a lot of the websites, both as a collector and as a promoter of some of these other programs.
Yeah.
And so he's got that. Plus he has the promotion side, and then you have the curation side from Vito. So that makes sense. The other thing that Gary really prides himself on is strategy here, and he really changed, I think, the way a lot of people thought about utility with NFTs.
Yes.
It seems like it's not to say there wasn't utility before, because that's unfair. There clearly was utility, but before and after Vee Friends, it's very stark, right? So there was a lot of art going out and there was very little art with utility. Vee Friends, almost all utility, although now considered art, right? Based on sort of some of the success of it. And now we have this idea that everybody has to think about utility. And that's one of the key benefits. He's saying, hey, yeah, we'll be able to give you a promotion and these other types of things, but we're going to help you figure out what utility to offer. And they have this really cool one for one of the artists who's on there. If you buy one of the NFTs, that artist will actually create a custom portrait of you.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like a really interesting utility that, you know, like, oh, I'm buying this thing, but I'm getting the NFT plus I'm getting this artist who's obviously somewhat accomplished doing a custom portrait of me.
Yeah. Yeah. We talked about it. We've talked about utility a lot in several episodes. We were talking about it earlier with ENS. I think there's some projects like games, like the ENS thing, where the utility is basically built into it, right? So you sort of get it out of the box. Then you've got this other layer of utility that folks do where it's like, okay, well, you're now part of a DAO, but it's sort of a weird, like, well, what's the purpose of this thing? And then you have the IP thing. The utility is the IP, and the Bored Apes route where you own the IP. I do think that Gary V is really good at that space where it becomes ambiguous and you need to articulate the utility in a not built-in way. It's not a game, so you have to now figure out how to continue to support this thing. And he's huge on that. And I think that's going to be a thing that as we see projects that have been out for a while and are coming out now, we'll see what happens when the rubber hits the road, if they're able to continue to provide a level of utility that makes those NFTs still have value. Yeah, I think a lot of projects are going to fail at that because it's tough. It's a commitment.
Okay, so ArtOfficial, everyone should check that out. Artofficial.com. OFFICIAL official, for those of you who are just listening.
Now, there was another thing he said that relates to this. I want to
yeah, go for it.
In the Hangout Hawks Day, he said he's also doing a show on Twitter Spaces that is, I think he said he's going to call it VNA, I believe. And it sounds almost like a finding up and coming artists and helping them get visibility for their NFTs, or helping them kick off NFT projects based on what they've done so far. So it sounds like you said earlier, the ArtOfficial might be for established artists.
Yes.
It sounds like this show that he wants to host is going to be sort of the other end of bringing up folks that are getting started, who have a lot of talent and commitment, but don't necessarily have the audience in place yet. That's interesting.
And that's great. And you see something like Kevin Rose's show, Proof, is very popular, but again, it's established artists. And it's very difficult because obviously there's very few really established audiences or artists, and they all have people who are already interested in them. So if you're going to do a podcast or something like that, you have an automatic draw, right?
Totally.
And then you have the multitude. It's just like most of us are in the multitude most of the time, right? And they are not established. They don't have a big audience yet. Mm-hmm. They still need a lot of assistance in this space, particularly Absolutely. Since having spent a lot of time with artists recently, they don't have these big audiences, big communities. No. And a lot of it's because they're segregated from the collectors by the galleries and the curators.
Yeah. Well, here's the great news for artists. Like, now is the time, man. Like if you're out there doing this stuff and you've been hustling and, putting your stuff up for free and getting lots of likes, but no actual cash that you can, continue to work on your craft full time or achieve whatever goals you want. Now is like you make the pie that everyone else is cutting and eating right now. So, it's very exciting, I think, for those folks.